Hey there guys, and welcome to FP1. Now let's have a chat about that scintillating Brazilian Grand Prix. So I hope my voice survives this podcast because it definitely didn't survive the race. I was screaming so much through those last 20 laps. An absolutely phenomenal performance by Max Verstappen. He smashed the entire weekend. And like I said, I'm not a massive Verstappen fan, but I've got to hand it to him this weekend. He absolutely pulled it out of the bag. Was definitely the best driver from basically qualifying onwards, I think. The Red Bulls seemed a little bit off the pace, I think, through the practice sessions, but come quali, they were just unbeatable. At least Max Verstappen was. Albon we'll get onto in a minute. Gutted for him, by the way. Like I said, we'll get onto that clash with Hamilton. But yeah, lots to talk about today. Let's delve straight into it. So let's then begin with lap one. And it was a pretty hectic lap one, to be fair. No actual collisions between drivers, but lots of racing going on. I think there was it Leclerc? Ricciardo and Norris, I think, coming to blows nearly at the penultimate corner. Brilliant racing between the three. Very, very respectful as well. Obviously, Leclerc's race not ending in such a great fashion as, say, the other two. But, yeah, brilliant start to the race. Really, really exciting. And, of course, Verstappen flying away at the beginning. Just couldn't really be touched, really. I mean, just amazing pace on that Honda power unit. Obviously, we've seen it through the last few years. I think 2016, obviously, it went round the outside of Rosberg, I think it was in the wet. 2018, he arguably should have won that race, then obviously clashed with Esteban Ocon, who was trying to unlap himself. This year, he did get his, revenge, I guess, on the circuit, and finally got that win, and fair play to him. But yeah, Gasly, P2. Let's just mention that. We're going to jump to the end of the race for a bit. What a performance from Pierre Gasly. Obviously, it's been a pretty up and down season for him. Started in Red Bull, got demoted. Everyone thought, well, there's his chance for a podium, gone. And then he pulls it out of the bag at the penultimate race of the season in a Torro Rosso. I honestly don't know what to think. Yeah, okay, there might have been a little bit of luck behind it with the second late safety car and the clash between Hamilton and Albon, which we'll get onto. But still, I think a massive confidence boost with Gasly. Obviously, he's got his seat confirmed as well for 2020 as well. So I guess a lot of the pressure was off. But what started as a pretty dire weekend for Torro Rosso, I think both of their cars going out in FP2, has turned into an absolutely fantastic result for him. I mean, Kvyat is a little bit off the pace all weekend, but Gasly absolutely pulled it out of the bag today. So well played to him. Now, P3 was Hamilton, and then he got penalised. So as of recording time now, just about 8:10 in the evening, Carlos Sainz, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Carlos Sainz is in P3, but that can still change because Carlos Sainz is now also under investigation for opening his DRS under yellow flags, and if that is true, then it means I think Kimi Räikkönen could end up with a podium in the Alfa Romeo of all cars. So obviously, I think it will still take maybe a few hours for that to be sorted. I'll update it in the description in the comments section if anything has changed, but I'm sure a lot of you will know already. Amazing race from Sainz today. He started last. Can we take that into account? He started last. McLaren couldn't get it all together in qualifying. It was sort of dodgy wiring or something. Pulled him out of Q1. They fit with a brand new power unit coming into the race. I think it was P15 after lap 1. Got into the points fairly quickly. And again, it's weird. He wasn't shown much on the TV, but he made some brilliant moves. I'm trying to remember who it was. It might be one of the Torro Rossos he was getting past, or an Alfa Romeo very on the race. Had a fantastic dive down the inside. Or it might have actually been the Force India now. But dived down the inside of turn 1. Really went for a gap that didn't exist. And pulled it off. So a fantastic move from him. I hope Sainz keeps that podium. I have a worrying feeling he won't, but we'll just see what happens. I mean, usually if they suspect him of opening a DRS under a yellow flag zone, it's pretty clear cut. And that penalty will be applied relatively swiftly. But still, absolutely incredible from him today. Let's move slightly further back then. Look at the crash on, I think it would have been about lap 10, lap 11, between Daniel Ricciardo and Kevin Magnussen. Now, this actually was a lot more important than I think a lot of people realise. So if we go back through what happened, Ricciardo went down the inside of Magnussen. There was a gap. Magnussen left him a fair bit of space. It must be said, which is pretty rare for Magnussen, but hey, we'll take it. But I think then Danny Rick locked up and did go into the side of him. Now, there was a lot of talk as to whether this was going to be a racing incident or whether they'd penalise Ricciardo, given the fact that he had already had to go and change his front wing for the clash, and Magnussen had sort of got going without much damage at all. But in the end, they did go with a 5-second penalty, and this is very, very significant as we think back later on into the race when you've got Albon and Hamilton coming together on, I think, the penultimate or the last lap, something like that. Then it's big, because if they gave a penalty for the Ricciardo crash, but then didn't give a penalty for the Albon-Hamilton crash, which was very, very similar circumstances, different corner, but Hamilton goes up the inside, there's a gap initially, that gap then closes, and obviously the two come to blows. Albon gets shoved down to like P17 or something. You did have to feel for Albon. I think in the post-race interviews he was almost crying, and you really had to feel for him. But if they give a penalty for that Ricciardo incident, I think they then have to give a very similar penalty. I think it was a 5-second penalty as well they gave to Hamilton for that clash. And yeah, it's very, very, very significant in that race. And was the penalty justified? I think yes, given the fact that Albon was thrown right to the back of the field. Definitely Albon, he could have got that first podium. Kind of ends up in that position by almost luck with the strategy in the way, and when Bottas retired with his engine failure. But yeah, absolutely scintillating last 20 laps of that race. It was something else. Yeah, you can't tell I'm just brimming with excitement today. Ferrari, let's talk about Ferrari. So what looked like a race they could have won from the start. Vettel obviously lined up P2. Didn't get the best of starts and lost out to Hamilton going into turn 1. And then obviously this thing with Charles Leclerc, which is going to raise a lot of heads. And I feel like it's going to be almost like that incident in Turkey with Vettel and Webber at Red Bull back in 2010 and how it always overshadowed the rest of their relationship. I kind of see this being very, very similar because they were, running P3, P4, I think, at the time, or might have been P2, P3, I can't remember. Actually, no, it was P3, P4 because Hamilton was second. And I think Leclerc had the faster tyres, and I'm surprised Ferrari didn't just say, okay, Leclerc, you're faster, go ahead. Maybe because it was for a podium. I'm not complaining that Ferrari didn't say that, but I guess if the team orders are there, I'm surprised they didn't use them, especially going back in Ferrari's history with team orders anyway. But in the end, they were allowed to race, which is fantastic. Leclerc goes down the inside of Vettel, gets a fantastic manoeuvre on the outside of turn 1, to be fair. And of course, you've got that second DRS zone, and that's where Vettel started coming back. And he pulled alongside, and I think he very, very slightly moved to the left, and that's what clipped Charles Leclerc's tyre. And it was such a weird incident. I was sat with a few mates, and we were looking at it, thinking, tyres don't come off like that. It was the smallest of touches, and I think if Vettel was an inch or two further ahead, it would have just been a side tyre wall to tyre wall contact. Nothing comes out of it. But instead, I think it sort of clipped almost the corner of the tyre, if that makes sense. And that's what pulled it off the rim, which subsequently broke Leclerc's suspension. And yeah, Leclerc was not particularly happy with that. Vettel, meanwhile, gets a puncture and can't pull his car to the pit, so also has to retire. And that's what caused that second safety car and all the drama that came out of that. So yeah, it was a race to behold. In regards to blame for that incident, I've got to give it to Vettel, I think. I can't really give it to Leclerc. He didn't do anything particularly wrong. But you could also equally say racing incident. The big question here, though, is what this means for Ferrari going forward and whether their just team dynamic and maybe even the relationship between Leclerc and Vettel is going to change going into the next race and then into 2020. Because usually the Ferraris are very, very keen to just swap their cars on track and not let them race. Now they've done it and they've ended up with a double DNF. What are they going to do? It's a bit of a conundrum for Ferrari, and I sadly kind of see it going with Ferrari just stopping their drivers from racing, which is a shame, but I think it's just the way it's going to go and the way that Ferrari operate. Could this also, without sounding like Nico Rosberg, be the end of Sebastian Vettel's tenure at Ferrari coming into next year? If that relationship is sour, especially if it stays sour and Vettel's relationship with past teammates have proved that he's not been the best team player at times, could that mean Ferrari end up siding with the young gun and Leclerc into 2021 and Vettel either retires or gets thrown off and replaced by another driver? Who that driver could be, honestly, could be anybody's guess, and I haven't the faintest idea. Perez, Hulkenberg, there's so many names that could go up in the air for that one. Norris, even, Ricciardo, Bottas, I'm listing these names off, but yeah, Vettel is going to be under a lot of pressure in this last race not to make a mistake. Also, if he gets penalty points on his license, could that shove him into that region of a one-race ban again? Maybe looking to the start of 2020. So, lots of things to think about for Sebastian Vettel's camp today. Big implications, I think, on the future of Ferrari. But yeah, I think that is everything. I've tried to cover everything that happened in that race. It was a bit of a quiet first 50 laps, and then the last 20 were just phenomenal. So what now I want you guys to do is just tell me what you guys thought of the race. Did you enjoy it? Did you like the late drive of the safety cars and there not being a VSC? I think a lot of people were expecting there to be a virtual safety car after the Bottas incident, which would have basically left us without anything that happened at the end there. So what was your opinion on that? What was your opinion on the collisions as well? Should Hamilton have had a penalty? Does Sainz deserve a penalty for now with this DRS thing, which to be fair, I've not seen any footage of it yet, so I don't know. Did Ricciardo deserve a penalty for his clash at the beginning? So, and yeah, does Vettel deserve anything for his clash with Leclerc? So many stories coming out of this Brazilian Grand Prix weekend, and a fantastic weekend in general. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it at home as well. Thank you very so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.